This is where the fun stuff starts. So now that the season's over, we're going to be hearing a lot about this summer. The NHL Players Association and the National Hockey League are going to be getting together this summer to work things out prior to September 15th. And please, for the love of all things that are holy, please work on an extension to this current agreement. I really don't want to see a lockout. There is nothing that these players are looking for that's worth losing a season over. There's nothing that I think these players are looking for that requires them to miss hockey to get done. And I don't mean that in a way that the NHL is 100% right, because they're not. This is just sort of one of those things where they need to just sit in a room, hash it out, get it done, it's finished, done. And then for the first time in what feels like forever, maybe we can get some hockey without any kind of a lockout or any kind of drama. And it's just, yeah, so we're going to keep playing. So September 15th is the date. And between now and then, you're going to hear a lot about escrow. Because when Jonathan Toews was asked what the most important issues are on the table, he said A is escrow and B is escrow. So for Jonathan Toews, who makes about $10.5 million a year, people might say, I don't feel bad for Jonathan Toews. And that's fine. That's fine. But for higher paid players, and as the cap goes up, escrow goes up as well. Gary Bettman points out that this is part of the salary cap system. That the escrow that they agreed to, that the NHL Players Association agreed to in 2012, that's part of what happens with salaries under a salary cap system. And I believe the NBA has one as well, although the NBA's escrow system's a little different. So for people who are wondering what it is, hi. Escrow's deducted from players' paychecks into a bank account, until a third-party bank account, until season's end. Once the NHL expenditures are calculated at the end of the season, the money either goes to the league or to the players. So it's to ensure that players are receiving the right amount of salary. So salary caps, if it's 50% players, 50% owners at the start of the year, they're like, hey, things can fluctuate wildly, so we want to make sure that we get 50% cut. And the players get the 50% cut, so we're going to hold about 10% of that money. And you might get it at the end of the year, you might not. Not only that, but what Corey Schneider was saying as well is that it fluctuates during the season. So you're never quite sure how much money you're going to get. And they just want some kind of certainty, which is weird because back in 2004 and 2005, the NHL was talking about cost certainty. They've got it now because they can have this 10% of the money sitting in a bank account. That's earning some hefty interest. I don't know where the interest goes. But it changes from year to year and quarter to quarter. So how much they take in escrow, I believe this past year was about 9% they took in escrow. Other years, it's been higher. It's been into the 11, 12%. They've been trying to bring it down. The NHL's been trying to regulate it so it gets brought down. But they can't bring it down too far, and they can't eliminate it, according to their side, because then that would eliminate being certain that the players are just getting the percentage that they're allotted. When the percentages were 57 to 43, the players very often got more than 57% of the money they should have got once expenditures were taken into place, or taken into account. That's the word I was looking for. It was right up in there. And it's interesting because now players are saying they're going to start doing some more research on this. I saw a couple quoted in an article about, we're going to start doing research. You guys should be doing research on this. I know if I had over $1 million of money that should have gone to me that went somewhere else, I'd be real interested in researching on where it went, who has it, how long they're going to have it, and everything. So yeah, players should definitely get on that and do as much research as possible. The trick becomes this. So NHL owners, a number of them are billionaires, and they might be pretty good at playing around with the numbers. So it's like, yeah, I know it looks like I had that $200 million profit there, but look at all these expenditures that just happened to show up. So it looks like I didn't make as much money as I did. And this is where the mistrust between players and owners goes back forever, literally forever. If you watched my history series last summer, it has always been there. Because owners have usually been notoriously cheap. And owners have lied before about how much money they made. They've fudged the books before. There's a reason Alan Eagleson fit right in with some of these owners. So there's definitely still some mistrust between the two sides. I do want to say though, the NHL Players Association and the NHL owners, it feels like a lot of that is dissipated. A lot of that dislike and mistrust is dissipated. Now it's a matter of sitting down at a table and getting it all negotiated. There are players who are concerned that the salary cap's going up too fast. Now, this doesn't mean they're not going to sit down and sign contracts, but here's the concern. So you're all signing contracts on July 1st. Great. Salary cap's gone up. Awesome. But it's always going up. And this is something I've always wondered about too. Like, wait, it went up again? It's a system that just feels like it's on some level, it feels like it's broken, and they're worried that it's inflating faster than the revenue growth in the league can sustain it. So, and John Tavares, of all people, is coming out and going, I don't know if this is a sustainable model. But it makes sense for Tavares to come out and say it because we have a Canadian dollar that fluctuates wildly. And the Canadian dollar fluctuating wildly, and that's why I'm wearing an Ottawa jersey, because this is where Eugene Melnyk would step up and go, yeah, see? The lower paying Canadian dollar, or the lower rated Canadian dollar right now, it's the value of the Canadian dollar is not great. It's been down as low as 71 cents US. Well, all of the Canadian teams pay out in US dollars. Every NHL player is paid in American money. So when the Canadian dollar tanks like this, it's a lot more expensive for Canadian teams to pay their players, which puts greater pressure on Canadian teams to have to increase prices for tickets so that they can cover this. And the Canadian dollar has been fluctuating really, really wildly. And you know, I've watched it. I've watched it for years now, and it's been crazy over the last few years how it can be as high sometimes as 85 cents and as low as 70. That's a 15% swing. And that can occur during the same year. So this is why we see league revenues cause this escrow to change sometimes from quarter to quarter. And the NHL has been trying for ages. And Gary Bettman was big on revenue sharing between Canadian teams and American teams based on the value of the dollar. So that agreement helped to save Canada from losing more teams in the late 90s. And now they have to figure something out here too. Because there's no guarantee that the Canadian dollar couldn't drop further. And if it goes up, then yeah, league revenues are great. But if it stays down, you've got some of the best teams for revenue generators on the northern side of the border, and now they have to generate 29% more revenue just to equal the revenue of somebody south of the border. So that's tricky, and I don't know how they're going to negotiate that out. Medical coverage. This was mentioned by Bo Horvat. So post-retirement medical coverage and treatment for concussion-related issues. Players are watching what these veterans that retired years ago have been going through, and they're like, yeah, we don't want to go through that. So they want something in the collective bargaining agreement that covers them. Odds are, whatever they're going to fight for would be something that would grandfather in older players as well, so that for players who've retired, they would be covered as well. I would be very surprised if there isn't some sort of a provision. Now, the NHL may very well make it so that in order to qualify for said benefits after you've retired, before this has been signed, it might be a lot of hoops you'd have to jump through in order to qualify for payment, but I could see something happening there. And the Olympics. The Olympics are interesting. So we didn't go send any NHLers to the last Olympics, and there was a lot of people upset about it. I wasn't overly upset about it. I was like, it's fine. But the next Olympics are right around the corner, and you can't really completely negotiate in the CBA. The most you could do is negotiate in the NHL saying, well, we'll think about it. Basically, because the IOC isn't at these meetings. The IIHF isn't at these meetings. And they're the ones who, ideally would love to have the NHL and its players there, but they're the ones you have to negotiate with. And there was some difficulties between the NHL and the IOC, we'll put it that way, when the NHL backed out, and some talk about certain costs that the NHL wasn't happy that it would have to absorb. They don't really, the NHL, you could argue, and this is something the NHL is going to argue as well, they haven't really benefited a whole lot from the agreement to send players to the Olympics. They've taken a large risk with some of their biggest names, And the benefit to the NHL, I'm not sure that it has had a benefit when you look at growth and international interest and all these things that I think were the reason they wanted to send the NHL's best players in the first place. I get that players want to go and represent their country. I totally get that. From the NHL side, I'm not sure that there's a great interest in sending players over. Because let's say, go back to John Tavares or Jonathan Toews. They go over, they represent Canada at the next Olympics in Beijing, takes a header into the boards, broken clavicle, whatever, and he's out the rest of the year, right? So this is the kind of thing that I've always thought with the Olympics, that the NHL might kind of cool on them for that reason. But none of these things on the board are items that I think mean we don't have a season next year. Hopefully players and the league come to some sort of an agreement on escrow. I think there's a transparency issue. I think the fact that players don't know up front, okay, wait, how much are they taking? So there should be some more, either the NHLPA doesn't have the information or they're not communicating it well with the union. And that's been a problem for the NHLPA for a long time too, is communication between the top and its members around the league as well. There's a lot to work on here. If we've learned anything over the many, many years that these arguments have taken place, the NHL almost always gets its way. The NHLPA might think they're getting some sort of a concession in a collective bargaining agreement, but the NHL will take that concession that they've given them, and they'll get 9 more from the players. At least that certainly seems to be the way that it works. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, as always. And for people who are saying, hey, Shannon, you should take some days off. I don't. I haven't for years. It's not going to start now. Because there's always something to talk about. And hockey, to me, is 365 days a year, and I prove it every single year. So thank you guys who are still around and still watching the videos and all that wonderful stuff. There will always be stuff to talk about, including this, which isn't necessarily the most interesting topic, but since we might be facing another potential for a lockout, we'll take a look at it now, and I'll let you guys know what gets reported in terms of updates on this. Hopefully we get an extension on this CBA and they figure out any of these details as well as they can. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.